Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. In a moment that will be replayed in Genoa city lore for years to come, Nikki Newman crosses an unthinkable line and turns on her own son, launching a desperate, furious attack on Nick Newman to untie and save Matt, and the fallout is seismic, raw, and devastating as mother and son collide in a clash fueled by secrets, guilt, and a truth Nikki has been burying for far too long. Because when Nick finally corners Matt and believes he's moments away from stopping a catastrophe, Nikki storms in. With fire in her eyes and fear clawing at her throat, shouting for Nick to step back, and when he refuses, when he insists that Matt must pay for everything he's done, Nikki snaps, shoves Nick with a strength born of panic, and then strikes him again when he reaches for her arm, sending Nick crashing into a chair as Nikki rushes to Matt's side and fumbles with the restraints, hands shaking, breath ragged, tears spilling as she begs Matt to hold on, and in that split second Nick realizes the unthinkable truth. His own mother has chosen Matt over him, and the betrayal cuts deeper than any punch ever could, because Nikki's decision is not impulsive madness but the explosive result of three shocking reasons she can no longer outrun, the first being crippling maternal guilt that has haunted her every waking hour since she discovered the truth about Matt's past and her own role in it. A truth Nikki never intended to surface but which has poisoned her conscience, because years ago, long before Nick ever suspected, Nikki made a choice that set Matt on this dark path, whether through a lie she told, a secret she kept, or a protection she failed to offer. And in Nikki's mind Matt is not just a criminal or a threat but a broken child whose life veered off course because she wasn't strong enough, brave enough, or sober enough to do the right thing at the right time, and that guilt has been gnawing at her, festering quietly until this moment forces it into the open, because when Nick stands there ready to let Matt face the full consequences, Nikki sees not justice but the final nail in a coffin she believes she helped build, and she cannot, will not, let another child suffer because of her mistakes, even if it means hurting the son who has always trusted her. The second reason being Nikki's desperate need to control the narrative before Victor destroys everyone. Because she knows Victor Newman better than anyone alive and understands that if Victor gets his hands on Matt, there will be no mercy, no due process, no second chances, only obliteration, and Nikki is terrified not just of what Victor will do to Matt but of what Victor will uncover in the process. Because Matt holds information that could blow apart the fragile balance Nikki has been trying to maintain, secrets that connect back to Victor's ruthless schemes, to hidden alliances, to past cover-ups that implicate Nikki far more deeply than Nick ever imagined, and in Nikki's mind, saving Matt is the only way to prevent Victor from unleashing a chain reaction that could cost Nick everything, his freedom, his family, his soul. So when Nikki attacks Nick, she's not just choosing Matt, she's choosing the lesser of two evils as she sees it, believing that if she can get Matt out, calm him down, control him, then she can still steer this disaster away from Victor's scorched earth justice, even if Nick will never forgive her for it. And the third and most shocking reason of all is Nikki's belief that Matt's survival is the key to exposing a far bigger threat, because Nikki has learned something Nick doesn't know yet, something so dangerous that she's willing to sacrifice her relationship with her son to keep it buried until the right moment, a revelation that Matt is not acting alone and that someone far more powerful, far more protected, is pulling strings from the shadows, using Matt as both weapon and shield. And if Matt dies or disappears now, that truth dies with him, leaving the real mastermind untouched, and Nikki cannot live with that, not when she knows the kind of devastation an unseen enemy can unleash in Genoa city, not when she's already seen too many lives ruined by secrets that stayed hidden too long, and so Nikki makes the choice no mother should ever have to make, attacking Nick, knocking him back just long enough to free Matt, whispering urgently that they have to go, that there's no time, while Nick struggles to his feet, fury and heartbreak warring on his face. As he shouts after them, demanding answers, demanding to know how his own mother could betray him like this, and Nikki's only response is a broken sob and a whispered apology she knows Nick may never hear or accept, because as she drags Matt away, the weight of what she's done crashes down on her, every step echoing with the knowledge that she has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. And the aftermath is brutal as Nick reels from both the physical attack and the emotional devastation. Replaying the moment again and again, wondering if he ever truly knew his mother, questioning every time she ever chose Victor, every time she ever asked him to stand down, to forgive, to look the other way, and now Nick's trust is shattered, his resolve hardened, because if Nikki thinks she can protect Matt from the consequences, she's wrong, and Nick vows that no matter what secrets Nikki is hiding, no matter what guilt she's carrying, he will uncover the truth and bring Matt to justice, even if it means standing against his own parents, while Nikki, on the other hand, is plunged into a nightmare of her own making as she hides Matt and tries to keep him calm, realizing too late that saving him physically doesn't mean she can save him from himself, because Matt is unstable, volatile, and increasingly paranoid, and Nikki begins to fear that she may have unleashed something she can't control, all while Victor senses that something is very wrong, his instincts sharpening as he realizes Nikki is lying to him again. And when Victor starts pulling strings, making calls, and closing in, Nikki finds herself trapped between the man she married, the son she betrayed, and the life she tried to save, and the question hanging over Genoa City is no longer just why Nikki attacked Nick, but whether she's doomed everyone by doing so, because the unthinkable betrayal has set off a chain reaction that will expose long-buried sins, test the limits of family loyalty, and force Nikki Newman to finally face the reckoning she's been running from for years, as mother and son stand on opposite sides of a war neither of them wanted but both are now forced to fight, proving once again that in Genoa City, love doesn't just hurt, it destroys, and the most shocking turns are always the ones that come from the heart. The fallout from Nikki's unthinkable attack on Nick doesn't fade with time, it detonates, spreading through Genoa City like a slow-burning wildfire, because once the shock wears off, the real damage begins, and Nick Newman is left standing alone in the wreckage of a moment he never believed possible, his body aching where Nikki struck him but his heart shattered in a way no physical blow could ever match, as he replays the image of his mother's face over and over again, not just furious or frightened but resolute, determined, as if she had made peace with betraying him long before she ever laid hands on him, and that realization poisons Nick with questions that won't let him breathe. Questions about how long Nikki has been protecting Matt, what she knows that she hasn't told him, and whether this was truly about saving Matt, or about saving herself, because Nick is no stranger to family betrayal, but this is different, deeper, more corrosive, because Nikki has always been the one constant he clung to when Victor's ruthlessness pushed him too far, and now that moral anchor is gone, leaving Nick adrift, angry, and dangerously focused, while across town Nikki struggles to keep Matt hidden and quiet, her nerves frayed as every sound feels like Victor closing in, because Matt is not the grateful, remorseful man she imagined rescuing, but a ticking time bomb, pacing, snapping, demanding assurances that Nikki can't give, pressing her for answers about what Nick knows, what Victor suspects, and how much longer he has before everything collapses. And Nikki realizes with growing horror that saving Matt may have only empowered his worst instincts, because the more he talks, the clearer it becomes that Matt believes himself indispensable, convinced that everyone needs him alive, that he holds all the leverage, and Nikki starts to see the same dangerous arrogance that has destroyed so many lives in Genoa City, making her wonder if her guilt has blinded her to the truth. That some people can't be saved, no matter how much you want to believe otherwise, yet she pushes that thought away, clinging to the belief that Matt is still the key to exposing the bigger threat she's been trying to outrun, the shadowy figure manipulating events from behind the scenes, and Nikki knows that if she hesitates now, everything she's sacrificed, including her relationship with Nick, will be for nothing, while Nick, fueled by rage and heartbreak, refuses to be sidelined any longer. Confronting Victor with the truth of what Nikki did, expecting fury but instead finding something colder, sharper, as Victor listens without interruption, his expression unreadable, and when Nick finishes, Victor doesn't explode, he calculates, because in Victor's mind Nikki's betrayal isn't emotional, it's strategic, and that terrifies Nick even more, because Victor immediately recognizes that Nikki's actions mean Matt is more valuable than anyone realized, and that alone makes Matt a liability that cannot be allowed to roam free. And Victor begins moving pieces without Nick's knowledge, quietly mobilizing resources, leaning on old contacts, and setting traps designed not just to find Matt, but to flush out whoever Nikki is protecting, and as Victor's net tightens, Nikki feels it instinctively, the pressure mounting, the walls closing in, and she starts making mistakes, reaching out to the wrong person, trusting someone she shouldn't, and each misstep brings Victor closer, even as Nick follows his own trail, retracing Nikki's movements, revisiting old secrets, uncovering fragments of the past that Nikki worked desperately to keep buried, and what Nick discovers shakes him to his core, because the truth about Matt's connection to Nikki isn't simple or clean, it's messy, layered, and soaked in regret, involving a decision Nikki made years ago under impossible circumstances, a decision that protected Victor's empire at the expense of someone else's life, and Matt was collateral damage, used, discarded, and left to fend for himself, and Nick begins to understand why Nikki is drowning in guilt, but understanding doesn't equal forgiveness, not when her guilt led her to attack her own son and unleash chaos across their family, and as Nick digs deeper, he stumbles onto evidence that confirms Nikki's third reason, the existence of a hidden puppet master whose fingerprints are all over Matt's rise and fall, someone with enough power to stay invisible and enough motive to destroy the Newmans from within, and suddenly Nick realizes that Nikki may be right about one thing, Matt is alive because someone needs him alive, and that realization turns Nick's fury into something colder and more dangerous, because if Matt is bait, then Nikki has walked straight into a trap, and she's dragged everyone else with her, including Victor, whose confidence begins to crack as he realizes that his usual tactics aren't working, that every time he closes in, someone moves. Matt just out of reach, erasing digital footprints, paying off witnesses, and feeding Victor just enough information to keep him chasing shadows, and for the first time in a long time, Victor Newman senses an enemy who isn't afraid of him, someone who knows his playbook and is staying one step ahead, and that threat forces Victor into unfamiliar territory, where brute force and intimidation aren't enough, and he must consider alliances he swore he'd never revisit, while Nikki reaches a breaking point as Matt's paranoia spirals into violence, accusing her of planning to turn him in, threatening to expose her secrets if she doesn't do exactly what he wants, and Nikki finally sees the truth she's been refusing to face, that Matt doesn't see her as a savior, only as leverage, and that realization shatters her resolve, because she didn't attack Nick to create another monster, she did it to stop one, and now she's trapped in a nightmare of her own making, torn between turning Matt over and accepting Victor's wrath or continuing to protect him and risking everything she loves, including Nick's life, because Matt is becoming more desperate by the hour, and desperation in Genoa City always leads to bloodshed, and as the pressure peaks, Nick and Nikki are forced into an explosive confrontation, one neither of them planned but both feared, when Nick finally tracks her down and confronts her with what he's learned, his voice shaking with anger and pain as he demands the full truth. And Nikki breaks, the dam finally giving way as she confesses everything, the lie she told, the deal she made, the moment she chose Victor over someone who needed her help. And the years of guilt that followed, and Nick listens, torn between sympathy and fury, because he sees now that Nikki's actions came from love twisted by fear and regret, but he also sees that her choices have put them all in danger, and when Nick reveals that the puppet master is closer than Nikki thinks, someone embedded deep within their world, Nikki realizes with horror that saving Matt may have been exactly what their enemy wanted all along, and the clock starts ticking faster as Victor closes in, Matt grows more unstable, and the unseen enemy prepares to make their final move, setting the stage for a reckoning that will force Nikki to choose once and for all between protecting the past and saving the future, between clinging to guilt and fighting for redemption, while Nick stands ready to stop her if she crosses the line again, even if it means standing against his mother one last time, because in Genoa City, forgiveness is earned, not given, and this shocking betrayal is only the beginning of a war that will tear the Newman family apart before it can ever hope to put them back together. The war Nikki ignited with one desperate act now barrels forward with terrifying momentum, because once truths are spoken out loud, they refuse to stay contained, and the fragile ceasefire between mother and son collapses almost immediately after Nikki's confession, as Nick steps back from her not in rage this time but in stunned disbelief, realizing that the woman standing in front of him is both the mother who raised him and a stranger shaped by decades of compromises, secrets, and fear, and that realization hurts more than the moment she attacked him, because it means this betrayal wasn't a single lapse in judgment but the culmination of a lifetime of choices Nikki made believing she was protecting her family, even as she quietly damaged it beyond repair, and Nick's voice cracks when he tells her that guilt doesn't give her the right to decide who gets saved and who gets sacrificed, that she doesn't get to play God just because Victor taught her how, and Nikki flinches at that. Because deep down she knows Nick is right, yet even now she can't bring herself to turn Matt in, not when she's convinced that doing so will trigger a catastrophe far worse than anything they've seen so far, and as they stand locked in this painful standoff, neither of them realizes that they're already being watched, that the unseen enemy Nikki feared has been monitoring every move, every argument, every emotional crack in the Newman armor, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and that moment arrives when Matt vanishes without warning, slipping out from under Nikki's protection and leaving behind nothing but a chilling message that makes her blood run cold, because Matt hasn't run, he's advanced to the next phase of his plan, a plan that suddenly pulls Nick and Victor into the crosshairs, forcing Nikki to confront the horrifying possibility that by saving Matt, she didn't delay disaster, she ensured it, and panic grips her as she realizes Matt knows exactly how to hurt her now. Not by exposing her secrets, but by targeting the people she loves most, and as alarms start blaring across Genoa City, both literal and figurative, Nick is thrust into crisis mode, coordinating with allies, piecing together Matt's movements, and trying to stay one step ahead of a man who knows the Newman family too well, while Victor, sensing the shift, drops all pretenses and goes into full war mode, unleashing resources Nick didn't even know existed, because Victor understands something Nick doesn't yet. Matt is no longer the problem, he's the messenger, and the true enemy is about to step out of the shadows, using Matt as the spark that will ignite chaos across the city, and as Victor's methods grow more ruthless, Nikki finds herself pushed further to the margins, sidelined by the very men she tried to protect, her warnings dismissed, her instincts questioned, until she's left with one terrible choice: either stay silent and watch events spiral out of control, or risk everything by doing the one thing she's been avoiding since the moment she attacked Nick, openly turning against Victor, and that decision terrifies her more than losing Nick's trust, because Victor is not just her husband, he's the architect of her past sins, the force she aligned with when fear outweighed compassion, and to oppose him now means tearing down the illusion she's lived under for decades. Yet theatrical destiny doesn't give Nikki time to deliberate, because Matt makes his move with brutal precision, orchestrating a public incident that forces Nick into a position where he must choose between saving innocent lives and capturing Matt, and Nick's choice, though heroic, allows Matt to slip away once again, fueling Victor's fury and confirming Nikki's worst fears that Matt is deliberately manipulating Nick's moral compass, using it as a weapon against the Newmans, and the situation reaches a boiling point when evidence surfaces implicating Nick in a crime he didn't commit, a setup so clean and calculated that even Victor hesitates, because it bears the unmistakable mark of someone who understands Newman's strategy intimately, someone who has studied their family from the inside, and as Nick faces the threat of arrest and public disgrace, Nikki finally understands the full scope of the enemy's plan: isolate Nick, discredit Victor, and leave Nikki standing alone with nothing but her guilt, and the realization breaks something inside her, because this time she can't fix it quietly, can't smooth things over, can't sacrifice someone else to protect the family, and for the first time in her life Nikki chooses transparency over control, stepping forward with a confession that rocks Genoa City to its core, revealing her past involvement in the decisions that shaped Matt's downfall and exposing the hidden network that's been operating behind the scenes, and the reaction is immediate and explosive, as alliances fracture, old enemies resurface, and Victor is forced into damage control mode, torn between protecting his empire and confronting the truth that his own wife has become his greatest liability, and while Victor fumes, Nick is left grappling with a complicated mix of gratitude and heartbreak, because Nikki's confession may save him legally, but it also confirms that she's been lying to him for years, and the trust between them feels irreparably broken. Even as they're forced to work together to stop Matt before he escalates further, and as the net finally begins to close, Matt reveals his endgame in a chilling confrontation with Nikki, accusing her of hypocrisy, of pretending she saved him when all she really did was delay his revenge, and Nikki listens, tears streaming down her face, realizing too late that Matt doesn't want redemption or justice, he wants acknowledgement. He wants the world to see the damage the Newmans leave behind, and when Nikki begs him to stop, to walk away, to let her make things right, Matt laughs, reminding her that some wounds don't heal, they fester, and that her attack on Nick wasn't an act of love, it was an act of fear, and those words hit Nikki harder than any slap ever could, because she knows they're true, and as Matt prepares to disappear one final time, leaving destruction in his wake, Nick arrives, weapon lowered but resolve unshakable, confronting Matt not as an enemy but as a man determined to end the cycle Nikki helped create, and the confrontation forces Nikki to watch as her son faces the consequences of her choices head-on, refusing to compromise his values even when it costs him dearly, and in that moment Nikki finally understands what real courage looks like, and as the dust settles, though not everything is resolved, not everyone is saved, and scars remain, Nikki is left standing in the quiet aftermath of a war she helped start, facing a future where forgiveness is uncertain. Victor's trust is shattered, and Nick may never fully let her back into his heart, but for the first time in a very long time, Nikki Newman isn't hiding behind guilt or fear, because she knows now that attacking her son didn't save Matt, didn't protect the family, and didn't stop the darkness, it only exposed it. And whether that exposure leads to redemption or ruin is a question Genoa City will be asking long after the shock of her betrayal fades.